They said nothing ever really happened in Brimley after dark. Stores closed by 6, street lights buzzed weakly over empty sidewalks, and the only music came from the hum of refrigerators behind diner counters. But that was before the summer of 1976, the summer the lights came in colors no one had seen before. I was 17 then, working part-time at my uncle's gas station on Main Street. Across the road stood the old Harris Furniture building, abandoned since the 60s, dust on every window, sun-bleached closing sale sign still hanging inside. It had been dead space for years, until one Friday morning a truck rolled up with boxes, cables, and speakers taller than me. The man who stepped out looked nothing like the townsfolk. Long hair, silver jacket, and a grin that said he'd seen the future and was ready to sell tickets. Evening Light Productions, it said on the side of his van. Nobody knew what that meant. By noon, rumors were flying faster than the July heat. He's starting a club, someone said. He's a record salesman, said another. My uncle just shook his head. That building's a fire hazard. He won't last a week, but that night, long after the gas pumps stopped ringing, we heard it, a sound rolling down the empty street like thunder made of rhythm. We found the source the next evening, a sign over the furniture store, hand-painted in gold, glowing under 2 spotlights. The pulse. Through the open door came light, sound, and a smell of something electric. Not smoke, not dust, but change. Inside, everything shimmered. The floor was polished black, the walls mirrored and flashing. And above it all, spinning slow and sure, was a silver globe scattering stars across the ceiling. I had never seen a place like it. No one in Brimley had. At first, only the younger crowd came, kids like me who wanted something new but didn't know what that meant. Then, little by little, others followed. Factory workers still in grease-stained shirts. Waitresses on break. Even Sheriff Doyle, though he pretended he was just checking the fire code. The man behind it all called himself Ray Mercer. He wasn't much older than 30, but he carried himself like someone who'd already lived twice. It's not a club, he said, and that's exactly what it became. Each weekend, the town that had once fallen silent after sunset now glowed with red, blue, and gold. Teenagers who'd never spoken before were laughing together under flashing lights. Couples who hadn't danced since their wedding held hands again. Even my uncle, who'd sworn the place would collapse, started washing his truck early on Fridays just to drive by. I didn't realize it then, but something bigger was happening, something no one could quite name. Maybe it was the music. Maybe it was the mirror ball. Or maybe it was the first time Brimley had looked at itself and seen something alive. Either way, the world outside our little town suddenly felt closer than ever, and it all started the night the disco came to Main Street. By August, the Pulse had turned into something the town couldn't ignore. On Friday nights, Main Street shimmered. Cars lined both sides of the road, headlights flickering in time with the beat that thumped from the old furniture building. From the outside, it looked like a dream trapped in a box of light, half real, half impossible. During the day, Brimley still looked the same. Men filled the diner for breakfast. Factory whistles blew. The drugstore radio played news about inflation and elections. But when the sun dipped behind the hills, everything changed. The town's quiet heart started to race again. I'd gotten a part-time job helping Ray Mercer set up equipment, cables, lights, speakers. He said I had a good ear for timing, though I think he just liked that I asked questions. There was something about him, the way he talked about sound, not as noise but as a language. You see, he told me one evening, coiling chords by the stage, music doesn't come from instruments. It comes from motion, from people needing to move. He was right. You could see it happen every weekend. People who spent their whole lives bent over machines or cash registers suddenly moved like they remembered they had bodies. The floor was never empty. Swirling colors, laughter, the squeak of shoes on the polished wood. Even the sheriff stopped pretending he was just keeping order. He'd lean against the wall, tapping his foot, pretending not to smile. But not everyone was happy. The pastor from St. Luke's gave a sermon about modern temptations, saying that light and sound could distract the soul from simpler joys. Mrs. Kowalski from the grocer's complained about the music keeping her awake, and my uncle, though he secretly liked the attention it brought his gas station, said it wouldn't last. "Nothing that burns that bright can," he muttered one night, watching the line outside the club. He might have been right, but for a while it felt like forever. Inside, time didn't move in hours. It moved in songs. Ray would stand in the DJ booth, eyes closed, hand on the dial, like a conductor guiding an orchestra made of strangers. Sometimes he'd whisper things into the microphone between songs, not announcements, but little phrases that stuck with people. "Don't rush the moment," he'd say. "Breathe it in before the lights change." Or my favorite, "This is what tomorrow sounds like." One night, he played a slow song, something soft and dreamlike, with violins that shimmered beneath the beat. The lights dimmed and the whole room turned gold. That's when I saw my parents. I don't know how long they'd been there, but they stood near the edge of the dance floor, holding hands like they hadn't in years. My father looked awkward at first, his work shirt buttoned to the collar, but then he smiled, the same smile I'd seen in old photographs from before I was born. Afterward he said, "It's loud, but it feels good, like something's alive again." That night, when I got home, I lay awake thinking about how strange it was, how one person could bring a town back to life without saying much at all. Just light, sound, motion, but there were cracks starting to show. Ray looked tired more often. The late nights, the constant setting up, the small town whispers, they were wearing him down. "Every place thinks it's ready for change," he told me once, "until it actually happens." He'd gotten an offer from a club in Chicago, bigger, louder, better money. I could tell he was tempted, though he never said it directly. "You think they'd remember this place if I left?" he asked. I didn't know how to answer. By fall, the leaves turned and the nights grew colder, but the pulse stayed warm, a heartbeat inside the dark. People said it couldn't last through winter, but it did. Every weekend, the lights came on, the mirror ball turned, and the town kept moving. Maybe it wasn't just a club anymore. Maybe it was something we needed to believe in, proof that life could still surprise us, even in a place that thought it had seen everything. I didn't realize it then, but that was our golden season, the last stretch of color before the gray crept back in. And as winter drew near, so did the silence we'd all forgotten how to live with. By December, the nights in Brimley grew longer, colder, quieter. The leaves were gone, the sidewalks slick with frost. The Pulse still opened every weekend, but something had changed. The air inside felt thinner, the light a little slower. Even the mirror ball seemed to spin more softly, as if it, too, was tired. Ray was still there, always smiling, but there was a distance in his eyes. He talked less, worked more. The Chicago offer had become an open invitation, and though he didn't say it out loud, everyone could feel the goodbye waiting in the corner. Attendance started slipping once the snow came. The farmers stayed home. Factory shifts ran longer. People said it was just the season, but deep down we knew it wasn't. Maybe it was the way excitement fades once it becomes routine, or maybe people just didn't know what to do with joy that came too easily. I kept helping Ray every Friday. We'd sweep the floor, polish the lights, untangle wires. Some nights the place barely filled half the room, but he played like it was a sold-out show. "A crowd's just a mirror," he told me once. "They reflect what you give them, so never give less than everything." I didn't know then that he was teaching me more than music. One night, after everyone had gone, I found him sitting by the stage with the lights still flickering. His silver jacket lay folded beside him, and in his hands he held a small reel of tape, the kind used to record mixes. "What's that?" I asked. "The first night," he said, "when the place opened. I recorded it, the laughter, the applause, even the hum of the speakers. Thought I might forget how it sounded." He smiled faintly and handed me the reel. "Keep it," he said, "for when the silence comes back." I wanted to tell him to stay, that Brimley needed him, that the town would go dark without the pulse. But I didn't. Some things don't need to be said out loud to be understood. 2 weeks later, he was gone. No announcement, no farewell party, just a handwritten note taped to the club's door. "Thank you for dancing. Keep the lights warm." The Pulse stayed closed for the rest of the winter. Snow drifted against its doors. The gold letters on the sign faded a little more with each storm. Main Street went quiet again. People went back to their routines. My uncle said, "Told you it wouldn't last," and went back to counting receipts. The pastor gave another sermon about distractions that pass, but when he spoke, I noticed half the congregation looking toward the window, as if listening for a rhythm that wasn't there. Sometimes after my shifts, I'd walk to the old club and brush the snow off the glass. I'd press my hand to the window, half expecting to feel warmth from the other side, but it was always cold. Still, if you stood there long enough, you could almost hear it, a ghost of music, buried deep in the walls, waiting to wake up again. That spring, the building went up for sale. No one bought it. For a while, kids broke in to explore, leaving footprints in the dust where the dance floor used to glow. Then even that stopped. One evening I took the tape he'd given me and borrowed a player from the high school music room. I sat on my porch as the sun set and pressed play. The sound that filled the air wasn't perfect, static, laughter, voices caught halfway between songs, but it was alive. For a few minutes the town came back to life in that little reel. I closed my eyes and saw it all again. The flashing lights, the mirror ball spinning, my parents dancing, the sheriff tapping his foot, and Ray smiling like the whole world was right where it should be. When the tape ended, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt full, like something had left a mark too deep to fade. After that night, I started working weekends at the radio station in the next town over. They needed someone to cue records and handle the dials. On my first shift, I played the same song Ray had used to open the Pulse, and when I heard it echo through the headphones, I realized what he'd meant. The crowd is a mirror. You don't need hundreds of people to keep the music alive. You just need someone willing to listen. Even now, years later, every time I hear that steady disco beat, I see the glow of Main Street, and I can almost smell the vinyl floors and cheap perfume. Some say the Pulse was just a phase, a strange, glittering summer in a town that preferred quiet winters. But for those of us who were there, it was more than music. It was a moment when the world stopped being small, and though the lights went out, they never really disappeared. They just moved from the ceiling to the heart. I didn't see Brimley again for almost 20 years. Life had carried me down highways I'd never expected. College, marriage, a few restless jobs that paid the bills, but never quite filled the silence. By the time I finally turned the car onto Main Street again, it was the spring of 1996, and the place looked smaller, like it had been folded gently into itself. The gas station was gone, replaced by a convenience mart with bright red signs. The diner still stood, though its stools were newer, its jukebox digital. And where the Pulse had once glowed with color, the old Harris Furniture Building stood dark again, its windows boarded, its sign long since taken down. I parked and just sat there for a while, listening to the town breathe. The air still had that faint smell of coal dust and rain. It felt exactly the same and completely different. Inside the diner, I recognized a few faces older now, softened by time. Mrs. Kowalski's daughter ran the place. She poured me coffee, and when I mentioned the Pulse, her eyes lit up. "You're not the first to ask," she said. "My dad used to talk about that place like it was magic," I smiled. "It was?" She leaned closer. "You know, the building's being cleaned up again. Some kids bought it, college students, I think. They said they want to make it a community space. Music, art, open nights. They're calling it the Echo." For a second, the room felt brighter. That evening, curiosity pulled me back to the old corner. The boards had been taken off, and through the dusty glass I saw shapes moving, paint cans, ladders, laughter. A young woman came to the door, hair tied back, flecks of silver on her jeans. "We're not open yet," she said, smiling. "I know," I replied. "I just wanted to see what it looks like now." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come on in." The floor was bare, but the bones of the room were still there. The same curved ceiling, the same air that hummed quietly, even when no music played. In the center stood a small silver globe, new but familiar, hanging from a single wire. "We found this at a thrift store," she said. "Figured every place needs a little light." I laughed softly. "You have no idea. Long time ago," I said. "When it was called the Pulse." Her eyes widened. "My uncle told me about it. He said the whole town danced." "For a while, yeah," I said. "For a while, it felt like the world stopped right here." We stood in silence, watching dust drift through the evening light. Then she asked if I wanted to see something. From a small crate she pulled out a worn cardboard box. Inside were old flyers, a record sleeve, and to my surprise, a reel of magnetic tape labeled Opening Night, 1976. My chest tightened. "Where did you get this?" "It was in the ceiling," she said, "tucked inside a vent." I smiled. He must have hidden it there himself. We borrowed an old player from the library down the street and threaded the tape carefully. When the sound came through, the first burst of applause, the low hum of a beat, the room changed. The years fell away. The lights seemed to glow warmer, the air thicker. Someone on the recording laughed. Someone shouted, "This is what tomorrow sounds like." It was Ray's voice. The young woman looked at me, eyes wide. "That's him?" I nodded. "Yeah, that's him." The reel kept spinning, the laughter fading into music, that same steady rhythm that had once carried an entire town into a night it would never forget. When it ended, we didn't speak. She wiped her eyes and said quietly, "We'll play this when we open, for everyone who remembers." The street lights blinked on, one by one, their orange glow soft and familiar. I walked to my car, but before getting in, I turned to look back. Through the window, the mirror ball caught the last bit of sunlight and threw it across the room, a scatter of tiny stars, just like before. And in that moment, it didn't matter that decades had passed, or that most people had forgotten. The light had found its way back. When I started the engine, the radio was already playing an old disco tune, something bright, full of brass and joy. I laughed, turned it up, and let it fill the car as I drove through town. Main Street was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel asleep. It felt ready, because somewhere between the past and the present, the pulse was still beating, steady, gentle, eternal. If this story made you feel something, subscribe to Back When Stories. Your support keeps these memories alive, one story at a time.